the real nitty-gritty of BioNeMo. We talked about Megatron LM and how it helps deal with those massive AI models.
Right.
But I'm curious, what are some of the challenges of working with the Megatron LM? It can't all be, smooth sailing, right?
You're right. It's definitely not always easy. One of the key things Megatron LM needs is determinism.
Determinism, okay.
It needs to make sure that if it asks for, say, data sample number 5, it gets the exact same sample every time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
No matter which GPU is processing it.
Yeah, if things were random, it would be chaos.
Total chaos.
But how does BioNeMo ensure this determinism while still allowing for things like, shuffling the data between training epochs?
Right.
Doesn't shuffling, introduce randomness?
It does, yeah. And that's where BioNeMo's ingenuity comes in.
Okay.
They came up with this really clever technique called an epoch index. Basically, each data sample gets its own unique identifier, and it includes both its original index and the epoch number.
Okay.
So even if you shuffle the data for each epoch, Megatron LM still sees the same sequence of identifiers every single time.
So it's like giving each data sample a passport with a unique stamp for each epoch it goes through.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty clever. But what about, data augmentation, where you make random changes to the data during training?
Yeah.
How do you make that deterministic?
Well, for that, BioNeMo uses the same epoch index to set the random seed. So by seeding the random number generator with this index, they ensure that even though the transformations are random, they always happen in a predictable way for each epoch.
Okay, so it was like controlled chaos.
Yeah.
Randomness with a purpose.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how BioNeMo balances the flexibility that researchers need with, those strict requirements of Megatron LM.
Right.
But let's move beyond data handling for a second. You mentioned that Megatron LM uses parallelism to, distribute the workload across multiple GPUs.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about that? What exactly does that mean?
Sure. Parallelism is the key to unlocking the power of those huge GPU clusters. It's about dividing the work in a way that keeps all those processors busy.
Okay.
And there are different types of parallelism, each with its own strengths.
Okay.
The simplest one is data parallelism. You just split your data across multiple GPUs and each one processes its own chunk.
Okay.
That works great for models that can fit on a single GPU, but what if your model is too big for even one GPU?
That sounds like a problem.
Yeah.
So how do you handle those supersized models? Is there a different kind of parallelism for that?
There is, yeah. That's where model parallelism comes in.
Okay.
And Megatron LM has a whole bunch of model parallelism techniques. Pipeline parallelism, tensor parallelism, sequence parallelism, even something called context parallelism.
Okay, that's a lot of illism.
I know, right?
Can we break those down a bit?
Sure.
What's the basic idea behind each one?
Okay, imagine an assembly line where each worker has a specific job.
Okay.
That's pipeline parallelism. You split your model into stages, and each stage is handled by a different GPU.
Okay.
Tensor parallelism, on the other hand, is more like, you have a big task, you divide it into smaller chunks, and a bunch of people work on those chunks at the same time.
Got it.
It splits the layers of the model across the GPUs.
So it's like dividing and conquering the model itself.
Exactly.
And what about sequence parallelism?
Sequence parallelism is really helpful when you're working with long sequences of data, like a protein sequence or a DNA string. It splits the processing of those sequences across multiple GPUs.
Okay.
And then context parallelism is kind of similar, but it focuses specifically on splitting the attention mechanism within a model, which is really important for those long sequences.
I'm starting to see how complex all this is. It's not just about, throwing more GPUs at the problem.
Right.
It's about, strategically dividing the work to get the most efficiency.
Exactly.
But with so many types of parallelism, how do you decide which one is best?
That's a great question. It really depends on a few things. The architecture of the model, what you're trying to do with it, even the hardware you're using. It often takes some experimentation to, find the sweet spot.
So BioNeMo isn't just about giving you the tools. It's also about, guiding researchers on how to use those tools effectively.
Yeah, exactly. They've even developed tools to test whether a data set is compatible with Megatron LM.
Oh, that's helpful.
So researchers can avoid problems and make sure their data pipelines are set up correctly.
It sounds like they thought of everything. But we've talked a lot about dividing the work. How does BioNeMo make sure that all these parallel processes are coordinated and working together smoothly.
They use some really advanced scheduling algorithms.
Yeah.
It's not just about dividing the work. It's about, cleverly interleaving the computations to keep the GPUs as busy as possible.
So it's like having an air traffic controller, making sure all those parallel processes, land smoothly, and no GPUs is left like sitting around doing nothing.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, good.
Those scheduling techniques are really important for scaling up to hundreds of GPUs and getting those crazy fast training speeds we talked about earlier.
It's mind-blowing just thinking about how complex all that is.
Yeah, it is.
But the payoff is huge. Faster drug discovery, potentially life-saving therapies. But let's shift gears a bit. We spent a lot of time on the technical stuff, but I'm really curious to hear about how people are actually using BioNeMo, like in their everyday research. What kind of, doors is it opening?
That's a great transition. BioNeMo is already making a big impact in a lot of areas of drug discovery, and it's only going to get bigger in the next few years.
Okay, I'm excited to hear about this. Let's dive into the practical applications of BioNeMo. We'll be back in a moment to explore the real-world impact of this groundbreaking framework.